Okay, we're learning Likkutei Sichot, Volume 1, Parshas Noach. And we're in Section 4, page 5. Hamayim hazeidonim shel hamabul nechlakim lishnei chalakim. The waters that made up the flood, the overpowering waters, were divided into two types of waters. Some of them came from the Tehom Rabbah, from the abyss, the great abyss. And the others came me'arubot hashamayim, from the chimneys of the heavens, literally, which means from rainfall. Likewise, the financial troubles that confuse people and trouble them divide into two categories. Tehom Rabbah, the depths of the abyss. These are tradot minyanim gashmim pchutim, from lesser physical problems.
Minor problems.
And they're minor in some way. Tardot parnasa v'domen. These are the livelihood problems that a person has. Do I have enough in my bank account, and so on?
Do I have a bank?
Do I have a bank? If you're in Africa. Arubot hashamayim, and the rainfall. Tradot minyanim ruchanim na'alim. Since rain comes from above. So this is another type of trouble that a person has. It's not financial difficulties anymore, though it is financial in the sense that the person is holding an accounting, but it's spiritual lack that he has. He has all kinds of questions about his spiritual conduct. It troubles him. For instance, the main type of thing that troubles people and causes them anguish during the day is what we call kaskanut tziburit v'chadome. Everything that has to do with taking care of the community. So for instance, they need to build a new shul, they need to buy this, need to do that. There's achnasas orchim, and you have to clean the shul, and you have to clean the apartment for the achnasas, all these things. So these are also troubles, but obviously they are from higher, the question is not so much here minor or major, but rather that they are a higher elevated type of problem, because it is from a spiritual matter.
Whether he's learning properly, what about
Right, that's also.
But he doesn't put that. Yeah, he talks about the very sigurim, but what about the very... So
let's see why. Because these types of problems, these spiritual, again, they're not spiritual because in the end it's physical. It's something physical that you're taking care of. It's not the question of whether you're learning enough or not. It's that I have to go get this book because otherwise we can't learn. I have to get here on time, or I have to do this. It's everything that goes around and allows the spiritual life to continue. And it's very interesting because if you're not involved in the community needs, then a lot of times you don't see these things. But I don't know how much of his day Yaakov spends, taking care of this Beit Chabad. I imagine it's about 80% of his day. So that's so then he comes and he says, and you see every morning that he doesn't daven with us. He starts davening, and then he leaves, and then he comes back, and he leaves, and he comes back, and he has no peace of mind. He can't pursue either davening or learning in a normal way. And this hinders him, it troubles him, and it prevents him from pursuing Torah, learning Torah, and keeping mitzvos the way he'd like to. So the Rebbe says a person should never come and say, because this is a lot of trouble, and I don't want to trouble myself, I don't want to get involved in community needs. He says, no, you have to. It's one of the mitzvos actually. In fact, you could say that a person who doesn't take care of any community needs is not exactly a human being. What is he? He's I don't want to say a parasite, but he's like what do you call it when there's one animal that lives off another? He lives in symbiosis with the community. He's not exactly part of it.
That includes the Karen?
What?
That includes the Karen?
The Karen is tzorchei tzibur, of course. Taking care of the poor is certainly a communal need. Unfortunately, that's the only thing that the state of Israel has going for it. That in the end, it does take care of a lot of communal needs. Right? But only needs. When you talk about community needs, it's very seldom that somebody who's a parnas of the tzibur, who's taking care of communal needs, also sees the needs before they arise, or can direct the community in a certain direction. That's someone else. Yeah, but most people are not that wise, and so they have no eyes in their face. They have eyes in their tuches, and they only see where they're sitting down. They don't understand where are we going, what are we trying to achieve. And so a lot of the communal needs in the land of Israel, for instance, are just, putting out fires. That's the way it is. And there's no ability to see where is this community supposed to go. And in any case, even though a person is dealing with communal needs, and he should, אין לדבר לגרום להפרעות בלימוד התורה ובקיום המצוות בפועל. So this should not cause him any kind of disturbance in learning Torah and keeping mitzvot. העניין שבמצוות הוא שעל ידן מגיעים לה ואתם הדבקים בהשם אלוקיכם חיים כולכם היום. הן מחברות את האדם המקיימן עם הקדוש ברוך הוא וממילא הן מחדירות בו חיות אלוקי. The purpose of the mitzvahs is to connect a person, like the Baal Shem Tov taught, that a mitzvah means a connection, a tzavta, to be together. It's to connect us to Hashem. So if a person is not keeping mitzvahs, then they have no godly life. They have no life force that is godly. וכשיש גירעון בזה, כיוון שלא מתנהג לפי השולחן ערוך, מה מוסיפה התעסקות בכל עניינים אלו? And if a person doesn't have the life force, the godly life force to begin with, so what does it help that he's taking care of communal needs? He's not really taking care of them.
הוא לא נתן לי את החשבונים, 46, שני דובר. הוא אמר שהיה בעיות, מספרים. צריך לזרוק שקל, 2,000 שקל, אתה נתת לי... שני רבעון. לפני יום טוב.
מה פתאום שני פעם אחת השם הזה שני רבעון?
זה חברה, אבל זה שני רבעון.
עוד לא נתן בסדר.
וכאן הוא אומר שהיה בעיות עם המספרים, והוא רק יכול לתת לי רטרואקטיבי. אין טעם לתת אישור 46 תאריך לפני התאריך של הצ'ק. אם הוא יכול להוציא לי את זה היום, אני מקווה שעכשיו תאפשר. תודה.
אוקיי.
אתה דיברת איתו? עם אורי?
דיברתי איתו אז, אבל לא רוצה לשגע אותו. אני משגע אותך במקום.
So, what's the premise here? The premise, very interesting, on the eve of Simchat Torah, we went to another shul.
Where?
Right next door. Dati Leumi shul. And
you didn't go to your own shul or you went
no,
to
the whole shul went.
Okay.
So when we got there, they were like in the third akaf already, fourth. We hadn't started even Ma'ariv yet.
Okay.
So we danced with them for like a while, for like half an hour.
Right.
And I have a good friend there. His name is Benjamin Brown, Benny Brown. And he's a very important lecturer at Hebrew U. And he studies the Haredi world. So he knows everything. He's a really, really nice guy also. So he's like anybody who wants to let juicy information out calls him up. He's like the Western Wall of the academic world. So that I'm not talking about anybody who's Haredi, like inside the chunt, and he wants to get stuff out, so he calls him up. And he's not a blabbermouth. He doesn't but he uses it in very interesting ways, and it comes out in his research, and it's a very interesting thing what he has going. In any case, he really knows the Haredi world very, very well. He's written a few books on it. So we've been friends for years, since we moved here, like 10 years. And we get along really well, and we eat by each other once in a while. He's a really great guy. And he's always very interested in Chabad. He's always interested in what's going on. I don't know so much about what's going on, but he's interested also about the history, so that I know a little bit more about. And he's always been okay. There's Chabad, there's Gur, there's Vision. Suddenly, this Simchat Torah, in the middle of Kafos, we started talking. So we went to the side and we talked a little. And he tells me, we're talking about how Israel has changed since he's like 55, 56. So he told me, how Israel's changed so much since we were in our teens. And there was nothing religious in Israel at the time. I don't know how you felt. But in the 70s, I felt like I was a Martian on Earth.
It was hard, much hard.
It was really tough. And today, it's like, the most natural, normal thing. It's really changed.
Okay,
So I said...
So that's a Nekudat school.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So I told him I think that a lot of what happened was that the culture changed because of all these artists that became Bali Tshuva, and they started filling, the popular airwaves, like there's the radio and the TV. It started filling it with the Jewish values and Jewish talk. So he said he agreed and this and that, and then he suddenly tells me something I almost felt like I was going to faint. He tells me, who really changed Israel? So I'm like, I was thinking, who would he say? He says, the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Ah.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe? Even I don't think that. So I said, what's your premise? So he says, because he ran on a platform of orthodoxy. And it took me a few seconds to understand what he was telling me. Like for him, he's the Tilumi. Orthodoxy is like a choice. It's sort of like you decide that this is what you want. You want to keep the mitzvahs the way that the Shulchan Aruch writes. But it's a choice between bad choices for him. Why? Because intellectually, he feels that he's somewhere else, and most of the people feel they're somewhere else. And the Tilumi world is very, very confused. There's Charedi Lumi, but he's not Charedi Lumi. He's the Tilumi. So for him, there are other options, like he could be this, he could be that. And he knows too much history to look at things and say they were given from Sinai. He doesn't feel that way. He doesn't have that conception. Maybe the Torah was, but everything after that is man-made, and he doesn't necessarily subscribe to it. And a lot of people don't. He said that suddenly the Rebbe came, and you have this great person who came and said, you're going to spread orthodoxy, and I don't care what the questions are, I don't care about anything. It's black and white, this is what it is, this is what we spread, period. And we spread it with love and care and so on and so forth. And he says that in the end won. Because he says you have to get, really what he was saying was, between the lines, me with all my questions, with all my academic knowledge, in the end I have to see someone of great stature who says, I have the answers to all the questions. I don't have to share them with you necessarily because we don't talk every day. But I'm telling you there are answers to all these questions, and this is what it is, and that's it. And he says that changed the world. The fact that somebody stood adamantly and said, this is what Torah looks like. This is what Yiddishkeit looks like.
He's telling the truth.
He's telling the truth.
But the truth can never be disputed.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So, but it has to be said in a certain way. And so it was very interesting for me to hear that, because I never thought that was how the Rebbe was presenting things. I always thought it was something more like this. That look, you too, these people who you want a connection with God. Even these people who have these doubts and these questions and whatever. You still want a connection with God. You understand that even if certain things were man-made, what can you do? You still want a connection with God. And then this teaching from the Baal Shem Tov is so central that if you don't connect yourself through mitzvos, you're not connecting. This is the connection. Mitzvos are the connection. There's no other way that you can do this. You can stand all you want and pray all you want all day long. But in the end, you have this feeling that if I don't conduct myself in a certain way, if I don't lead my life in a certain way, so I'm bringing something very nice to the table. But what did God give me to connect us? What He gave us are the mitzvos. And I always thought that was the Rebbe's approach. Like, I want to give you the thing that you want the most, which is to connect to God. And I'm sorry, you're not going to find it any other way. You can look and you can search and you can try, you can do whatever you want, but in the end you're going to come back to mitzvos. And anyway, so what he says here is that if you don't have mitzvos, you have none of the godly livelihood inside you. You have none of this life force inside of you to do and to act in a godly way. You're not going to achieve godly goals. You're always going to be limited to the mundane. In any case, הטענה של טרדה בערובות השמיים, עניינים רוחניים, בטעות יסודה. He says the fact that you could even think that you would be troubled by spiritual matters is a mistake. מקור טענה כזו אינו הנפש האלוקית כי אם הנפש הבהמית. The source of these troubles does not come from spiritual matters at all. It's not coming from the divine soul, it's coming from the animal soul. The animal soul is troubled, it's not the divine soul. The divine soul is happy to do all this. It's never troubled by spiritual matters. לכן, וההוכחה לכך היא ההפרעה ללימוד התורה וקיום המצוות לפי ההלכה המבוארת בשולחן ערוך, דבר זה הוא ודאי היפוכה של קדושה. Because it cannot be that something like communal needs, which is spiritual in nature, could present any kind of opposition to what the Shulchan Aruch says you need to do. So if a person comes and says, so first of all, it's a whole question, because what do you mean? It says in the Shulchan Aruch that if a person is engaged in communal matters and he cannot get away, he doesn't have to daven in right. So how can you tell me that they don't contradict? Even though Shulchan Aruch has a way of saying that at times they are vying for your attention, and you have to decide which one you're going to do. And it says it's better to do the communal matters but he says that's not the same thing. He's talking here about that it troubles you. In other words, if you're not troubled, you have time for both. What? It becomes a burden, and you're worried about the burden, so you come and you say, today I won't have time to daven mincha. What do you mean? You can't say, daven mincha. You'll see, if you take those 10 minutes away, and you pray, then you'll see that they're not in opposition. What he's saying is, don't give one up for the other. Even though the Shulchan Aruch tells you that you can. But he says, but that comes from really an onus. But most of the time, the person is not really forced to decide between the two. It's just the burden on his mind that's causing him to decide that it's either this or that. וכיוון שהוא ההפך הקדושה, הרי אף שכרגע עסוקו בארובות השמיים, יורדו בסופו של דבר מדרך ילדך ומארובות השמיים לתהום רבה. And because he's giving into his animal soul, which says, I don't have strength. Sorry for taking something that's close to personal. If I come and say, but I had to do all kinds of things last night. For other people, not for me. And I went to sleep really late. And then the next morning I missed my shir, which you didn't. I'm not talking about you. It was close. And then I come and say, but I can't do both. I can't learn next morning. I'm too tired. I went to sleep at 2 a.m. He says that is the eitzah, that is the advice of the animal soul. Because the animal soul wants to sleep. The truth is, it's a great excuse. The truth is, you can get up at 6 anyway. And you only slept 4 hours, it's true. But it'll work out. Don't worry about it. The moment you treat it like a burden, then you can't juggle everything. Then you decide, I have to drop a few things. The truth is, you don't need to drop them. But he's going to go further tomorrow. And he's going to tell us an incredible piece of advice about how not to fall into these problems. And it only takes 5 minutes a day. There's 5 minutes that are very critical every day that prevent a person from falling into this false claim by the animal soul that I don't have strength, I don't have money, I don't have energy, I don't have this, I don't have that, to do both things. I can't juggle everything.
You can.
And there's a very, very simple piece of advice, and it works every time, and I've seen it on myself every single time. So we'll see this tomorrow.
Leo sent me this. Do you want to see it? I thought he was right about his job. He got this last.